level on the screen. Is that good enough?
Oh, yeah. Why do you have that turned down?
Turn down what?
But that's okay. Yes, it does. It looks good. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yeah. Scoot over a little bit more. You can zoom in just a tad bit closer so that he's centered, and then.
Well, then I start.
Well, okay. It's fine. So, we have this cameras will hit both of us, and then that camera hits you.
Okay.
So just if you're looking to, you can talk to both, but if you're looking, where do I?
Do you prefer for me to talk toward the camera rather than...
You can do both. Okay. I think. So periodically to the camera.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me. Last sniff of my nose.
'Tis the season.
I know. And so you were the last workshop. And so I've got maybe a 2-minute intro that I'm going to do where I'm kind of talking to the people.
I've already hit the record button.
Yeah, that's fine. And then I'll just kind of fly through the questions.
Great.
So, awesome.
Let's do it.
Okay. Welcome to week 8 of the Lighting Up Our City workshop, where together we learn how to do that which God supernaturally wired us to do. And that's to share Jesus and to love others well in a way that points them to Him. I hope you have enjoyed learning from our outreach experts as much as I have. And I hope that their insights have really helped you to love others well in a way that points them to Jesus. I also hope that you've been able to link arms with others. Something beautiful occurs when we connect with other Christ followers who take His mission to make disciples of all nations seriously. We're able to encourage and pray for one another, to share stories and insights, and to inspire one another to persevere. Now, I don't know about you, but I get fired up when I hear about others telling people about Jesus. There's a supernatural synergy that occurs as we link arms with others and unite on this eternally important mission, which is why it is so important that you and I do our part to create a culture of evangelism. And to help us understand why and ways in which we can do that, I have brought Jed Mullenix with us. And so he is the CEO of Within Reach, a ministry that unites over 40 faith organizations in the Omaha metro area and the surrounding communities to reach their city for Jesus Christ. Now, Jed studied at Ozark Christian College. He's pursuing a Master's of Arts in Religion at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, and he currently serves as a teaching pastor at Stonebrook Christian Church, a multi-site church in Omaha. So, Jed, I know you have served Christ in just so many capacities, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we've been following Jesus now, my wife and I, for about 25 years, which is great. And much of that, in terms of our vocation, has been within the local church, especially for me, and much in the Northeast, outside of Boston, where I went to join a church that was already in motion, planted by some of my friends. Within 2 years, they all moved away and asked if I would lead the church, and so I ended up leading that church for 10 years. And it was a great experience and fostered in us a deep love for people and people's pursuit of Jesus and culture and great food and beauty and seas and mountains and everything in between. But that's a bit of our story, and then just 7 years ago moved back to the metro, and it's been great to be here again.
Wonderful. So how would you describe, because I know a lot of what you do is creating culture, and so how would you describe an evangelistic culture?
Yeah, I think an evangelistic culture and culture itself is one where the mission of Jesus, which at the end of the day is simply our love for Jesus, that then is displayed in part through our joining Jesus to help people encounter Jesus. So
I love that.
We love Jesus, we join Jesus in helping people encounter Him as well. When that happens and it permeates to where every person in that setting has the opportunity to be part of that, that begins to shape the culture. If it's simply programmatic, meaning we just program evangelism, or if it's simply occasional or sporadic in that we talk about evangelism, or if it's simply something that we believe we should do or be part of, that's not culture. Culture is when it really infuses the life of every person who calls that place home. Or, as we know as followers of Jesus, we're on our way toward doing that.
Awesome. So why is that so important? How does both being part of creating culture and just living in that type of environment, how does that keep us inspired in our own evangelistic efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're a part of a culture that values the mission of Jesus and makes it front and center within the life of a follower of Jesus, one of the things that I thought of that happens often is story sharing. There's a great celebration around when people encounter Jesus in a meaningful way or in a life-changing way, or when people are sharing the story of Jesus with those that they love, live alongside, work alongside, enjoy life alongside. And I just think that story sharing is so important because it shows me as an ordinary person, you as an ordinary neighbor, someone else as a colleague, or in a place, in our city. It shows them that sharing the story of Jesus is something that as followers of Jesus we get to do. It's a joy that we are able to be part of in sharing that. And so I think through story sharing, it elevates the mission of Jesus. I also think that through story sharing, it normalizes the sharing of the story of Jesus. We need to hear examples of people who are helping their friends, colleagues, neighbors encounter Jesus in meaningful ways. And that doesn't simply mean evangelizing as we think of, sharing the gospel. That means living radically hospitable lives, opening our homes, our tables. I think it means living radically generous lives in our neighborhoods and cities. And I think it means living very open lives with those that we're including in our lives. And so the more that we hear that, the more normal, or I would say natural, it becomes to living like Jesus and sharing his story as the Holy Spirit opens opportunities. And then when people are participating in that and we're sharing those stories, it builds culture, right? So it's encouraging to everyone who's part of it.
Well, and how does that help us become more effective in our day-to-day encounters with non-Christ followers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I need to hear stories about how other people are doing it. And stories doesn't simply mean on a screen where I'm watching a well-filmed video or story. What it means is that I'm encountering with people regularly who are saying, here's how I'm loving my neighbor, and the people who live around me, or here's how I'm learning to love and interact with my colleagues in a way that show them through the way that I do business or interact with my other colleagues or go about my work that elevates the person or the character of Jesus in the way that I live. Or when I'm on the soccer field with my family, or when I'm out at the restaurant with our circle of friends, or when I'm having neighbors over into my driveway, around a bonfire, the way that I'm interacting with, encouraging, blessing, building life into them, I need to hear stories about how people are doing that, which then encourages, and that's where I come back to normalize, or it naturalizes. It says, look, this isn't as hard as you and I maybe have been taught that it is. It's not as daunting as you and I maybe have imagined that it is, but it's actually much more natural where we get to join the Holy Spirit in what he's doing around us.
That's really beautiful. And so, whose responsibility is it to create an evangelistic culture?
Yeah, well, for sure, I would say that the leaders in that environment or organization, or if we're talking about even in a local church or a setting, the leaders need to be kind of a chief dreamer of what that culture looks like, right? So in a local church, I think the role of a pastor or spiritual leaders within that community is not to create all of the culture, but it's to dream about what an evangelistic culture could be and what that might look like. Once again, culture setting, although it's really important that the leaders in that culture really set the pace or the tone, including everybody in that culture setting is so important. So for example, if you think of how culture happens in some of the businesses you and I know really well, and I don't know what businesses our audience would be familiar with, but let's look at like a Google culture, right? One of the things they value is innovation. And so they make it possible for every week 20% of each of their employees' time to be spent on innovating new ideas. Okay, so they've included every employee in the process of culture making because their value is innovation. When you bring that into the local church, we need to dream about what our values are. What would it look like to be a radically, and by that I mean a wholly committed evangelistic community? We need to dream about what that would look like, but then we need to include all people by making it normal, natural for them to be part of that. Yeah.
And probably for those who are in areas where they don't have a local church, then they could maybe step into that role of dreaming and sharing the dream.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, the question is, as they begin to set that dream, the question is, whether it be in my city, my community, my neighborhood, my village, what does it look like for us to come alongside and live life with our neighbors, our colleagues, those we spend time with on the weekends? And how do we live as a blessing to them? Meaning, how do we encourage? How do we lift their arms? How do we bear burdens? How do we care for personal needs? How do we maybe meet a financial need? How do we just breathe life into them? How do we invite them into our lives? And oftentimes I find that that's done through hospitality, sharing our lives, sharing our homes, sharing our tables, our food, our life. And then looking for ways to join the Holy Spirit as we do those things in speaking words of life into and over them. And I just find that as dreamers or the leaders in that context begin to create space where that becomes more normal and natural and they encourage others to do the same, that you find that then culture builds, and then you share stories to re-emphasize how that's taking place. The last thing you want to do, whether it be the local church here in the West, or whether it be maybe a more informal setting where followers of Jesus are gathering, and that is the church. But the last thing you want to do is programatize evangelism. What I mean by that is you don't want to say that evangelism is a class you go through, and then once you move past that class, then you go evangelize and come back and report, and then you go out again and come back. I think there's value to the rhythm of going and coming and sharing, but I think what you don't want to do is saying that evangelism, you've got to learn that here, and then you go out there and do it. Instead, what you want to say is, as you live your life in the world, here's how you live as the presence of Jesus, as his follower, and here's how you share the story of Jesus as doors open.
I love that, and I really love how you simplified. You really brought it back to sharing stories, living it out, engaging, and sharing stories, and creating culture that way. Well, Jed, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, and really for taking such an active role in the Omaha metro area of creating culture, and beyond, because we know that anytime we share the gospel, anytime we live for Jesus, it creates this ripple effect, right? And that extends beyond our neighborhood, beyond our city, beyond our community, and really beyond our generation. And I am excited for me to practice some of the insights that you have shared, and I pray for you, our viewers as well, that you will begin to implement some of the, just share some stories, and just engage with people in your community, dream with people in your community, and begin to think intentionally, strategically, and with a focus on eternity. And know every time you step out and share the love of Jesus Christ, whether that's through sharing a glass of water, or just providing a listening ear, or telling others of what he's done in you, then you can live knowing that you have played a part in positively impacting culture for generations to come. That'd be it.
All right. Is there anything else you want to build out, or?
No, well, so these are just, so what we're doing is, and I'll tell you a little bit of the motivation behind it. One is to make things free, because we hear a lot from people from other countries that it's just hard to access content. The other is to make it manageable, because sometimes, like these big programs, and they're like, oh, I can't do an hour a week of this class. So we're doing it like 10 minutes, but then we're creating a Bible reading plan that will correlate with that, and then a Bible study that will correlate with that, and then discussion questions to create so they can begin to create like a culture, and then some role-playing guide. Because I have OCD, I don't know if you know that.
No.
So I have to role play.
Sure.
I have to role play. I'm like, can I say that again, honey?
Yeah.
Okay, can you say it this way? So some people need to role play.
Nice.
So anyway, so that's kind of the catalyst for all of this.
And who's like a primary audience for you?
Probably large. I mean, we do, like I said, we do have a global, very diverse audience. But I would say probably those who don't have access, who are not in a big church. So I'll give you a little bit of where the inspiration came from. I spoke at 2 events back to back, and one was at the local Nazarene district, like they had all their churches come together, very small churches, and I just sensed like God's Spirit in permeating that place, and like the women wanted to go share Jesus.
That's good.
But then I'm talking with them. They don't have a women's ministry director on staff.
Yep.
They don't have a discipleship director on staff. And I'm talking to the woman who organized the event. She's already overwhelmed. And she's like, yeah, I want to do this. I don't know how.
Sure.
So that's kind of the, but then even like I was talking to Bethany, we've spoken at Bethany a lot, and at one of the Within Reach, and she's like, we don't know how to do this. We don't know, in our tradition, we've never done this. And I said, well, we're going to have a program that you can just kind of, so anyway, it's more for the small people who don't necessarily have a church, who have kind of like a lay, which there's a lot of that. There's really a lot of that. And then also those who have smaller churches and who can't afford to hire a big outreach minister to kind of drive it. And so say, how can we help drive it for you? You just bring the people and show up, and hopefully this will create. I believe people want to share Jesus. I know if you have Jesus in you, you want to share Jesus. It's just how can we make it bite-sized? That's good. And so anyway, that's good. I don't know if that answered your question.
That's good.
But
yeah, it's great. Good. You put resources, questions alongside the videos. Is that what you do?
Yeah. So we're doing. It's a whole program.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and I'll have like an opening and intro, or opening and a closing that kind of ties them all together.
Yeah. Because I think when I think through some of the principles that I share, I just think when you look at the life of Jesus, I didn't go into this.
Yeah.
I probably would if I did it again. When you look at the life of Jesus, you see this radical hospitality. I mean, starting with his followers, right? Then you see, overwhelming generosity. And then you see in life sharing, in the normal spaces of life. I mean, he comes alongside fishermen, he comes alongside tax collectors, he comes alongside the broken and the marginalized, the hungry, fill in the blank, the hurting, the sick. But that's just the natural rhythm of his life. And then he encourages his followers to do the same.